Hey everybody, it's pretty much official by now. Oklahoma and Texas are headed to the SEC. College football has been ruined behind the scenes for years. As a ACC guy of a mediocre team in the ACC, this blows. It guarantees that my team's gonna suck forever. Isn't it? There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. I hate this. I'm so mad I'll make another video about ACC and what the ACC needs to do to combat this fight against this new SEC powerhouse. Hey everybody, still pissed off. First of all, we got to get Notre Dame. What the ACC needs is teams with national recognition. I've got Notre Dame at 1. And I've got Cincinnati and UCF at 2. That's right. I do not want West Virginia. West Virginia should be our 4th option.
Needless to say, not everyone agrees with me that the SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma is a positive thing. And from Cdogg's perspective as a Georgia Tech fan, I certainly don't blame him. This move most definitely puts a squeeze on the other 4 power conferences to add more members in order to keep up and stay competitive in college athletics. I figured it would be interesting to analyze my fellow college football all across America co-hosts' candidates for ACC expansion, as I agree with him that they are the most realistic and likely candidates the conference would go after. But before I dive in, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the show Cdogg and I are both a part of. College football all across America airs every Thursday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Central on D4 Sports YouTube channel. Jordan, Zach, D4, Cdogg, and I discuss in depth about all the ongoing events in the Power 5 conferences, as well as some select group of 5 schools. If you love college football, you should check out College Football All Across America live every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time. Anyways, let's dive into the numbers. In Cdogg's video, there are 4 primary candidates he mentions: Notre Dame, UCF, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. Cdogg makes it abundantly clear that the first target for ACC expansion should be Notre Dame, as they are already partial members of the conference and that they are one of the largest brands in college football up to this point. By looking at their revenue alone as a brand, they would be the 4th largest within the conference and the 29th largest nationally, as they brought in $118.7 million of revenue in 2019. While I found it to be an anomaly that I was able to find this information via the Wall Street Journal, given that Notre Dame is a private school in which they don't have any obligation to publicly report their athletic revenues, unlike the other 6 non-public institutions of the conference, I would imagine Notre Dame's revenues would only increase if they joined the ACC, as they would be joining a much more lucrative television rights package with the ACC via ESPN than their current one they have with NBC to air their games nationally. While South Bend isn't a particularly large market according to the Nielsen market ratings, nor is Indiana a super large state to add to the conference footprint, Notre Dame is unique in which most of their fans and viewers are actually not from their main media market. This, of course, is due to the fact that Notre Dame's primary demographic for their fans are those of Irish and Catholic backgrounds, which have significant populations in cities of the Northeast and Midwest like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Boston, as compared to areas in northern Indiana in the proximity of South Bend. As for whether Notre Dame accepts or not, the other choices for expansion become less clear and concise on who to choose between. It seems like the 3 best candidates for the ACC to consider expanding to outside of Notre Dame are the 3 that Cdogg alludes to in his video: West Virginia, UCF, and Cincinnati. Starting with West Virginia, West Virginia's biggest upside is that it is by far the most valuable college athletics brand out of the 3 schools, as they brought in $102.7 million from the 2019 season. This is more money than Virginia Tech, NC State, and Georgia State brought in as revenue that very same year. Another upside is that the ACC gets a stronger foothold in the Pittsburgh media market, as they would now be home to 2 of the 3 majorly supported college athletics programs in the region, with West Virginia, in addition to Pitt, being members of the conference. The only challenge they would face as a result is from the Big Ten taking revenue out of that media market from Penn State fans. But this allows for the ACC to have a significantly larger presence in western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, with the addition of the West Virginia Mountaineers to the 24th largest media market according to Nielsen ratings. West Virginia's addition also allows for the renewal of many competitive rivalries they had from their time when members of the ACC like Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse were members of the Big East and played West Virginia every single year. The main issue with adding West Virginia is the fact that outside of the brand, it really doesn't add anything all that new for the ACC. The ACC would only be adding the top team in the 39th largest state, which only has a population of 1.8 million, and that population is also rapidly decreasing. The state of West Virginia lost roughly 60,000 people within the last 10 years, according to the information provided in the 2020 census, and this means that West Virginia is also the state with the fastest shrinking population. While that may not inherently equate to Mountaineer fans giving up their fandom of the university, what it does indicate is that there is a future where there are likely less people attending their games at the same frequency if they are located farther away from Morgantown, and thus don't have the same financial or logistical means to keep actively giving the school revenue. This would mean the school would likely have to find other means of securing revenue to offset this bleak-looking future for the state's population projections. UCF, on the other hand, is very different from West Virginia in almost every aspect. What the university lacks in athletic revenue, it possesses in characteristics that make it a likely candidate for significant growth as a program. Florida is the third largest state. Florida is one of the fastest growing states as it gained 2.7 million new residents in the past decade for a growth rate of around 15% since the year 2010, and UCF's location Orlando gives it a prime media market for the ACC to expand into, as Orlando is the 18th largest media market in the country according to Nielsen rankings. The biggest concern that UCF faces is the fact that a lot of these positive aspects hinge on their team's performances in order to maximize their potential. UCF is the fourth most valuable college athletic brand behind Florida, Florida State, and Miami within the state. It would be hard for UCF to fight for the attention of state residents as a result of it not just being the fourth largest college athletics brand in the state, but it would also have to fight the likes of 3 NFL teams, including the Super Bowl winning champions of this year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 NBA teams, 2 NHL teams, and 2 MLB teams, in addition to many miles of coastlines and beaches, many acres of amusement parks like Disney World and Universal Studios, and many other forms of entertainment that would try to take away the attention of UCF athletics from a UCF fan if they weren't performing so well. Florida State and Miami would also likely object to the addition of a third institution from the state of Florida entering the conference, and UCF would likely face an uphill battle in terms of getting the approval for those 2 universities' administrations to grant them membership into the ACC. UCF only brought in $69.1 million in athletics revenue in 2019, which would place them behind all of the other existing members of the ACC who publicly share their athletics revenues. UCF seems to epitomize itself as either a boom or bust addition to the ACC, with having key metrics that the ACC presidents and chancellors would be drooling over to be able to have in their conference as a member. This edition of UCF could also likely fall flat as a result of the university being located in a very competitive sports and entertainment market that may just not be big enough for the ACC to deem a valuable addition given all the other forms and means of entertainment Floridians would potentially consume ahead of the likes of UCF football and UCF basketball. It's for these reasons that UCF would not be a surefire guarantee of a success story if it became a member university of the ACC. Last, and let's be real, probably least is Cincinnati. While I most certainly respect Cincinnati's athletic programs as they have been making a lot of noise, particularly in football as of late, they really don't bring anything new to the ACC outside of a new state into their footprint. While Ohio is the 7th largest state and has a population of 11.8 million people, along with Cincinnati being the 37th largest media market, Ohio having a modest growth rate of only 2.3% in state population really isn't that enticing for expansion, especially since that is the 6th worst in terms of population growth since 2010. Cincinnati also has to share a state with Ohio State, which is the 3rd most valuable college athletics brand, as well as it is the most valuable college athletics brand outside of the state of Texas. Ohio State's 2019 revenue of $210.5 million absolutely dwarfs Cincinnati's meager $68.8 million that they made in 2019. Ohio State outvalues Cincinnati by a ratio of greater than 3-1 based on said 2019 revenue data. While Cincinnati probably had the best football team out of the three teams, being them, West Virginia, and UCF this past season, utilizing football success is an unwise metric to base all of your proposals for college athletics realignment. Realignment is driven primarily by money, while football, basketball, and all the other sports are often considered an afterthought. The SEC didn't add Texas and Oklahoma for the main purpose of acquiring a perennial underperforming 7 to 8 win team and a perennial playoff disappointment to their football roster. The SEC added the most and 8th most valuable athletics programs by revenue to their conference. Likewise, the Big Ten didn't add Maryland and Rutgers to their conference to allow the rest of the Big Ten East members to have 2 easy wins on their schedule. They did so because the Big Ten believed they could gain viewership in the lucrative New York, Washington, and Baltimore media markets along the East Coast. I like Cdogg and a bunch of people in this community, but I find it frustrating that people are missing the root cause as to what drives this realignment in the first place. It's for this reason that I fundamentally disagree with Cdogg when he says UCF and Cincinnati are better expansion candidates for the ACC than West Virginia is. While I staunchly agree that Notre Dame should be the ACC's primary target if they do decide to expand, the ACC should consider West Virginia, UCF, and then Cincinnati in that particular order, as the order of which candidates they should consider adding into their expansion plans. Money, brands, and media markets drive realignment in the television era of college athletics, not who had the better football team more recently. And as a result of this, I believe that if the ACC is considering adding 2 more members and they could choose any one of these options they wanted first, the ACC should choose Notre Dame and West Virginia. The last time I made a financial video about college athletics, it was my best performing video in channel history, so I decided to do a more speculative one this time with the ACC. Shout out to Cdogg for giving me permission to utilize some of his content as well as being an inspiration for this video as well. If you liked what you saw, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons on this channel, and while you're at it, subscribe to Cdogg as well. Anyways, thank you all for sticking around and watching this video. As always, roll Tide and roll out! Woo!